The ubiquity of deception and the illusion of trust. We live in a world where trust is paramount, a cornerstone of our relationships, both personal and professional. We inherently desire to believe in the good intentions of those around us, to accept their words at face value. However, the uncomfortable truth is that deception is far more pervasive than we often acknowledge. It's not relegated to shadowy figures in back alleys or strangers with ulterior motives. It can reside within the seemingly safest circles of our lives, our friends, partners, and even family members. We delude ourselves into believing we are adept at detecting falsehoods, possessing an innate ability to discern truth from fabrication. Yet, the reality is often a stark contrast. We frequently choose to overlook the subtle warning signs, the red flags that flutter in the breeze, simply because we yearn to maintain the illusion of trust in those closest to us. I, myself, have fallen victim to this very trap. Once, I considered myself a keen judge of character, confident in my ability to spot dishonesty. But my perception was shattered when I discovered a person I deeply trusted had been consistently, and brazenly, lying to my face for months. The stinging realization was not that I had missed the clues entirely, rather, I had consciously chosen to disregard them, blinded by a desire to believe in the inherent goodness of the individual. The truth, however unsettling, is that people lie, with varying degrees of intention and consequence, more often than we imagine. Accepting this fundamental reality is the first crucial step towards sharpening our awareness and developing the ability to see beyond the carefully constructed facades that conceal deceit. So, if you are truly prepared to dismantle the illusions that shroud your relationships and confront the often uncomfortable reality of human interaction, then prepare yourself to delve into the undeniable signs that you are being lied to. Brace yourself, because the insights you are about to gain may resonate more profoundly, and strike closer to home, than you initially anticipate. 1. Evasive maneuvers, the art of subject switching. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where the other person deftly dodges your questions with such speed and precision that it feels like you are engaged in a high-stakes game of verbal dodgeball? You introduce a topic of significant importance, perhaps one you are deeply invested in, and with lightning-fast reflexes, they abruptly pivot to an entirely unrelated subject, effectively severing the thread of the original discussion. It's as if they possess a pre-planned escape route, always at the ready, enabling them to vanish into the perceived safety of an irrelevant topic the moment the conversation veers into uncomfortable or revealing territory. Allow me to share a personal anecdote that vividly illustrates this phenomenon. In a past romantic relationship, this subject-switching tactic was a recurring pattern, so frequent that it almost became normalized. Initially, I failed to recognize the significance of this behavior. Whenever I attempted to initiate conversations about future plans, even something as seemingly innocuous as discussing our aspirations for the next year or exploring how we might navigate potential challenges together, my partner would instantaneously redirect the conversation towards something completely trivial. It might be a sudden fascination with what we should have for dinner or an enthusiastic account of a random, inconsequential post they had encountered on Instagram. The shift was subtle, almost imperceptible, and I, in my desire to avoid conflict and maintain a sense of harmony, allowed it to slide. I rationalized their behavior, convincing myself that they simply weren't ready for such discussions or that I was perhaps being too intense and demanding. However, the underlying truth, which I eventually had to confront, was that they were never ready, and that consistent evasiveness was symptomatic of a much deeper issue than mere topic avoidance. It was, in essence, an avoidance of responsibility. This brings me to a potentially controversial point. People do not simply change the subject because they are inherently forgetful or easily distracted. Their actions are deliberate, driven by a desire to evade the discomfort that arises from facing difficult truths. Many individuals would rather navigate a labyrinth of avoidance than confront the stark reality of their own actions or beliefs. And, regrettably, we often enable this behavior by refraining from pressing too hard, choosing to prioritize the maintenance of a superficial peace, even if it means allowing subtle lies to permeate the cracks of our relationships. This approach, however, is fundamentally flawed. Dodging a tough conversation is not a demonstration of conflict avoidance, it is, in fact, an invitation to dishonesty, a tacit agreement that difficult truths can be conveniently swept under the rug. The deeper message embedded within this behavior is that when someone consistently evades meaningful conversation by changing the subject, it is not simply an act of avoidance, it is a deliberate refusal to engage with the truth. It signifies that they place a higher value on their own comfort and emotional security than on providing you with the clarity and transparency you deserve. And what does that ultimately reveal about the fundamental foundation of your relationship, whether it be with a partner, a friend, or even a colleague? A lie, as we often conceive it, does not always manifest as a blatant falsehood uttered aloud. Sometimes, it takes the form of a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in conversation, a strategic maneuver designed to deflect attention from the uncomfortable truth. We tend to believe that the only lies worthy of being challenged and exposed are those that are explicitly spoken. However, the lies that are left unspoken, the truths that are deliberately avoided, are often the most insidious, as they slowly and silently erode the bonds of trust, piece by piece. This is a lesson I learned through painful experience. Each time I passively allowed the conversation to be redirected, I was, in essence, silently condoning their avoidance, granting them tacit permission to keep me in the dark. I desperately wanted to believe that everything was fine, that my concerns were unfounded, and so I willingly allowed the subject to change. But this is precisely the danger of allowing others to steer conversations away from uncomfortable truths. The issue extends far beyond the specific topic being avoided. It ultimately compromises the very integrity of the relationship. Therefore, I implore you, do not allow people to escape accountability by changing the subject with impunity. This is not about adopting a confrontational or aggressive stance, it is about establishing a clear standard of honesty and open communication within your relationships. If someone truly values you and the relationship you share, they will demonstrate the courage and integrity to face difficult conversations head-on, regardless of how uncomfortable or challenging they may be. And if they consistently fail to do so, perhaps it is time to critically evaluate the true nature of the relationship you are building and the level of trust that genuinely exists. Truth, however difficult to confront, is the only solid foundation upon which to construct lasting and meaningful bonds. Any carefully constructed lie, however artfully concealed, will ultimately crumble under the weight of reality. 2. The art of listening, hearing versus understanding. Listening, a seemingly simple act, is one of the most profoundly underrated skills in the art of cultivating meaningful connections and building rapport. It is, in fact, the very bedrock upon which we make others feel truly seen, heard, and valued. The unfortunate reality is that most of us do not genuinely listen in the truest sense of the word. Instead, we passively wait for our turn to speak, eagerly anticipating the moment we can interject our own thoughts and opinions. We become so preoccupied with crafting our next brilliant response, meticulously formulating our argument or witty retort, that we completely miss the opportunity to truly absorb and understand what the other person is trying to convey. And this, my friends, is the surest and fastest way to make someone feel utterly invisible, as if their voice and perspective hold no value. Here's a controversial truth that may sting: if you are not actively listening to understand, you are, in essence, wasting both your time and the time of the person you are supposedly conversing with. I, too, have been guilty of this superficial listening. I have sat in countless conversations, nodding along with feigned attentiveness, pretending to be fully engaged, while my mind raced ahead, busily preparing my next insightful point or clever anecdote. And guess what? People can sense that disconnect. They intuitively recognize when you are merely waiting for your turn to speak, rather than genuinely absorbing their words and attempting to understand their perspective. This type of superficial listening does not make them feel valued or respected, it makes them feel used, as if they are simply a sounding board for your own thoughts and ideas. That is not charm, that is pure selfishness. However, when you cultivate the discipline of listening to truly understand, you are not only demonstrating profound respect for the other person, but you are also forging a connection that transcends the superficial level of mere chit-chat. You are creating a safe and supportive space where they feel empowered to express themselves authentically, without the pressure of an immediate response or a back-and-forth debate. I recall a specific instance when I was engaged in a conversation with a colleague who was clearly grappling with a difficult situation. My immediate, almost instinctive, reaction was to jump in with unsolicited advice, to offer solutions and fix their problem. But, realizing the potential pitfalls of this approach, I consciously restrained myself and simply listened, without interjection or judgment, offering only my undivided attention. And you know what transpired? They began to open up even more, sharing their vulnerabilities and anxieties with a remarkable degree of candor. They felt safe, knowing that they were not being judged or analyzed, but simply heard. By the end of the conversation, they expressed their gratitude, stating that they had never felt so heard. That was the pivotal moment when I truly grasped the power of genuine listening. Sometimes, the most impactful and valuable thing you can offer another person is simply your unwavering attention and a willingness to listen without judgment. The deeper message here is that in a world saturated with noise, where everyone seems to be vying for attention and eager to express their opinions, the ability to genuinely listen is a rare and precious gift. People are not necessarily seeking constant advice or unsolicited opinions, they are seeking understanding, empathy, and a sense of connection. They yearn to feel like someone truly gets them, someone who can see beyond the surface and appreciate their unique perspective. And when you can offer that gift of genuine listening, you will instantly distinguish yourself as someone who genuinely cares, someone who is truly invested in their well-being. That, my friends, is authentic charm. So, I urge you to make a conscious shift in your approach to communication. Stop listening merely to reply or to formulate your next argument, instead, cultivate the discipline of listening to truly understand. That is the key to making others feel truly seen, heard, and valued, and that is where the real magic of human connection unfolds. 3. The unprovoked defense, a shield of guilt. Have you ever posed a seemingly innocuous question to someone, only to be met with a disproportionately defensive response, as if you had just accused them of committing a heinous crime? Imagine asking, "Hey, did you happen to grab the last slice of pizza?" and suddenly they launch into a passionate monologue, vehemently denying any involvement, declaring that they would never dream of doing such a thing, and questioning your audacity for even suggesting it. It's a wildly exaggerated reaction, as if they have been caught engaging in something far more egregious than simply enjoying the last slice of a pepperoni pie. This is what I refer to as getting defensive without cause, and it is a massive red flag, practically screaming, "I'm hiding something." Allow me to recount a story from my own experience that perfectly illustrates this phenomenon. I was once involved in a group project, and one of my teammates began exhibiting increasingly peculiar behavior whenever I inquired about the progress of his assigned portion of the work. I would pose a simple, straightforward question, such as, "Hey, how's the report coming along?" A perfectly normal and reasonable inquiry in a collaborative setting. However, his reaction was consistently defensive, launching into accusations such as, "Why do you always assume I'm slacking off? I've been working incredibly hard. I don't need to be micromanaged." This was the same individual, mind you, who spent the majority of our meetings scrolling through his phone, seemingly oblivious to the task at hand. It wasn't long before we discovered that he had barely completed any of his assigned tasks and was desperately attempting to conceal his inaction. Here's the controversial assertion: people who react with excessive defensiveness when they have absolutely nothing to worry about are usually the very individuals who are guilty of wrongdoing. It's a classic manifestation of the saying, "A hit dog will holler." I have learned from first-hand experience that when someone responds in this manner, it is a prudent time to take a step back and assess the broader context of the situation. What are they so desperately trying to protect or conceal? Because if someone is genuinely innocent and possesses nothing to hide, they will not feel the need to transform a casual question into a personal attack on their character. Honest individuals respond with calm assurance and straightforward answers, while those harboring secrets remain in a state of heightened alert, as if they are perpetually waiting for the hammer of justice to fall. The deeper message embedded within this behavior lies in understanding the intricacies of human nature. When people react defensively without a legitimate reason, it is their guilt speaking, not their integrity. You must possess the courage and discernment to recognize that their overreaction is not a reflection of your being out of line, it is a calculated attempt to prevent you from uncovering the truth. They are akin to a house with all the doors and windows securely locked, yet they vehemently insist that nothing is amiss. Meanwhile, you are holding the key, and they are desperately hoping you never attempt to unlock the secrets hidden within. And here's the real kicker: when we choose to ignore these defensive reactions, we inadvertently allow lies to flourish. We implicitly teach people that they can successfully evade accountability by making us feel guilty for even daring to ask questions. However, it is not about being intentionally rude or intrusive, it is about prioritizing honesty and transparency over superficial comfort. People will twist themselves into elaborate knots in an attempt to avoid being caught in a lie, and defensiveness is merely one of the many tactics they employ. Therefore, the next time someone reacts with an unwarranted level of defensiveness in response to a seemingly harmless question, do not back down. Remain curious, and gently probe a little deeper. Because, more often than not, their reaction is a carefully constructed smoke screen designed to conceal the truth, and you deserve far better than to be kept in the shadows. 4. The overly polished narrative, a tale too good to be true. Have you ever listened to someone recount a story with such flawlessly crafted details that it feels as though it has been meticulously rehearsed for an Oscar-worthy performance? Every detail is perfectly placed, the timing is impeccable, and the narrative flows so seamlessly that it almost seems too good to be true. Well, guess what? It probably is. I have encountered this phenomenon more times than I care to admit. There was this one individual I knew, let's call him Jake, who possessed an extraordinary ability to weave intricate tales, stories that possessed the kind of cinematic flair you would expect from a Hollywood screenplay. On one occasion, he regaled us with an elaborate account of a supposed business deal he had recently closed, describing every moment with the precision and dramatic tension of a James Bond film. Everything was meticulously detailed, down to the exact second he signed the contract and how he sealed the deal with a firm handshake while gazing triumphantly out over the city skyline. You could almost hear the soundtrack swelling in the background. The underlying problem, however, is that reality is rarely so neatly packaged. Life is messy, unpredictable, and seldom follows a predetermined script. And when someone's story sounds as though it has been meticulously rehearsed for a TED Talk, your internal lie detector should immediately sound an alarm. It eventually came to light that Jake had significantly exaggerated half of his story and outright fabricated the other half. But here's the controversial aspect: most people are hesitant to challenge overly polished details because, let's face it, we all enjoy a good story. We are drawn to narratives that are neatly structured, engaging, and emotionally satisfying. Therefore, we often allow inconsistencies to slide, even when our gut tells us that something is amiss. And this is precisely how skilled liars often succeed: they exploit our innate desire for a tidy and compelling narrative. We want the story to make sense, to be easily digestible and free of ambiguity. The messiness and inherent contradictions of the truth can be inconvenient and unsettling. But the reality is that life rarely comes in perfect packages, and when someone's story is excessively smooth and polished, you are likely being presented with a work of fiction, not a faithful recounting of events. Now, this is where the issue becomes more profound. When someone meticulously overpolishes the details of a story, they are not simply attempting to impress you, they are actively trying to control the narrative. They want you to believe a carefully curated version of events that is specifically designed to benefit them. It's as if they are the director, writer, and star of their own self-serving movie, and you are merely the audience, expected to passively applaud without question. But this is the moment when you need to take a step back and recognize that perfection does not exist in real life. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I began to probe deeper into Jake's stories, whenever I asked for slightly more detail or clarification, the carefully constructed facade began to unravel. The crisp edges of his narrative would blur, and suddenly what had once been a flawless tale of success transformed into a patchy, awkward mess. That is the inherent weakness of liars. They can rehearse a story to perfection, but they struggle to handle follow-up questions that delve beyond the surface. Real-life details are often chaotic and unpredictable, and when someone's narrative is excessively smooth, it is a strong indication that they are crafting a fantasy rather than recounting the truth. The deeper message here is that life is inherently complex, messy, and filled with imperfections, and that is precisely what makes it beautiful and authentic. When someone attempts to present you with a story where every detail is perfectly aligned, where nothing goes wrong, and everything clicks seamlessly into place, they are essentially selling you an illusion. And if you buy into that illusion, you are ultimately doing yourself a disservice. Because real connections, real trust, and real relationships are not built on fairy tales, they are built on raw, unvarnished honesty, even when it is uncomfortable or unflattering. So, the next time you hear someone spin a tale that seems a little too polished, a little too perfect, don't just sit back and passively enjoy the show. Ask questions, dig deeper, and gently challenge the inconsistencies. Real truth is often messy and imperfect, and if someone is unwilling to reveal those imperfections, they are ultimately concealing the truth from you. Remember, life does not need to be perfect to be honest, and anyone who pretends otherwise is likely hiding something they don't want you to see. 5. The body's betrayal, turned away. Have you ever noticed that subtle shift in someone's body language when, even as they engage in conversation, their torso is angled away from you? It's as if their words are conveying engagement, but their posture silently screams, "I'd rather be anywhere else right now." It's one of those almost imperceptible signals, a silent betrayal that people often assume you won't notice, but trust me, it speaks volumes. Allow me to provide a concrete example from my own experiences. I once had a friend who, whenever we ventured into deeper, more meaningful conversations, would subtly shift his body away from me. Initially, I dismissed it as a mere quirk, a habitual posture that held no particular significance. However, as the pattern persisted, it became increasingly clear that something was amiss. Whenever we touched upon sensitive or uncomfortable topics, his body would begin to turn away, as if physically attempting to escape the conversation. I didn't require a degree in psychology to decipher the underlying message: something was off. Eventually, it came to light that he had been dishonest about several things, nothing earth-shattering, but enough to erode the foundation of trust in our friendship. His body, it seemed, had betrayed him long before his words ever revealed the truth. Here's where the controversy arises: many people dismiss body language as unimportant, insignificant, or the product of overthinking. But that is precisely where they err. Your body does not lie in the same way that your words can. When someone angles their body away from you, even subtly, it is as if their subconscious is attempting to distance themselves from the truth. And the most disconcerting aspect is that most of us choose to ignore these subtle cues, because we are unwilling to confront the potential implications. We convince ourselves that it is merely a habit, an unconscious tic, or that it is simply no big deal. But let's be honest, if someone is physically distancing themselves from you during a conversation, it is a red flag. It may not always indicate a massive, calculated lie, but it is certainly a sign that something is amiss, that there is an underlying discomfort or unease. And here's the deeper point: when people cannot face you directly, it is not simply about physical comfort, it is about confronting the emotional weight of the situation. They are unwilling to confront the reality of the issue at hand, and their body language betrays them before they even consciously realize it. I, too, used to dismiss these signs, thinking that I was perhaps reading too much into things, interpreting innocent gestures as evidence of deception. However, after witnessing this pattern unfold time and time again, I have come to realize that when someone physically turns away from you mid-conversation, they are not merely being restless or uncomfortable, they are subconsciously attempting to avoid being fully seen, because deep down, they are concealing something. The real message here is that body language does not exist in a vacuum. If someone's body turns away from you while they are speaking, it is a signal that they are uncomfortable with the subject being discussed. They might be attempting to shield themselves, not necessarily from you personally, but from the truth that they are unwilling to reveal. It's as if they believe that by turning away, they can somehow diminish your ability to see through their facade, to perceive the deception they are attempting to conceal. I'll share what I've learned from all of this. Do not ignore these subtle signs. While it may feel awkward to acknowledge them, and even more awkward to address them directly, body language is one of the most honest and revealing forms of communication. When someone turns their back on you, figuratively or literally, they are creating distance, emotional distance, mental distance, and physical distance. And if you fail to address that distance, it will only continue to grow. So, the next time you are engaged in a conversation and notice someone subtly angling their body away, take it as a cue. Perhaps it is time to ask the tough questions that they are desperately trying to avoid. Perhaps it is time to probe a little deeper and uncover what they are attempting to conceal. Because honesty does not turn its back on you, and neither should the people you trust. 6. The shield of humor, laughing off seriousness. Have you ever attempted to engage in a serious, heartfelt conversation with someone, only to have them laugh it off as if it were nothing more than a trivial joke? You are there, attempting to discuss something deeply meaningful, perhaps a personal struggle or a concern that has been weighing heavily on your mind, and they respond with an awkward chuckle, brush it aside, and swiftly move on to a lighter topic. It's as if they are wielding humor as a protective shield, deflecting the seriousness of the situation and dodging the truth altogether. Initially, this behavior might seem innocent, perhaps even charming. But trust me, when someone consistently resorts to laughing off serious topics, it is often a telltale sign that they are concealing something beneath the surface. Allow me to share a personal anecdote that vividly illustrates this dynamic. I was once involved in a romantic relationship where I would consistently attempt to broach important issues, the real, substantive conversations that are essential for a healthy relationship. I might express something like, "Hey, I've been feeling a little disconnected from you lately," and the response would invariably be a nervous laugh, followed by a dismissive comment such as, "Oh, you're just overthinking things. Relax." That laugh was not simply a casual, light-hearted response, it was a calculated maneuver designed to deflect the conversation and evade dealing with the underlying issue. And guess what? Over time, I realized that any attempt to address a serious concern was consistently met with humor, sarcasm, or a quick, distracting joke. What I eventually came to understand was that laughter was being used as a tool to dodge accountability and avoid facing uncomfortable truths. Here's where it gets controversial. We have all been conditioned to believe that humor is inherently a positive attribute. It lightens the mood, diffuses tension, and makes everyone feel more comfortable and at ease. But when someone consistently employs laughter to sidestep serious topics, it is a significant red flag. It's as if they are attempting to smuggle lies past you, disguised as harmless jokes. And here's the kicker, most people will allow them to get away with it, because no one wants to be perceived as the overly serious buzzkill who insists on dwelling on a topic after someone has already transformed it into a joke. People often laugh off serious subjects because they are unwilling to grapple with the weight and complexity of the conversation. It's an easy escape route, plain and simple. They prefer to keep things light and breezy, ensuring that you don't dig too deep or ask too many probing questions. But here's the unvarnished truth, real conversations, the ones that truly matter, are not supposed to be perpetually easy or light-hearted. They are meant to challenge you, to make you think critically, and to push you towards honesty and vulnerability. And if someone is consistently incapable of handling that level of emotional depth, you have to ask yourself, what are they really hiding behind all those carefully crafted laughs? There's a deeper message embedded here about emotional maturity and willingness to engage in authentic communication. When people habitually laugh off serious topics, they are signaling, either consciously or unconsciously, that they are not ready, or worse, not willing, to engage in a truly honest and vulnerable conversation. It's as if they are placing a shiny, jokey facade over something they know they cannot adequately explain or defend. Perhaps it stems from a deep-seated fear of being vulnerable, or perhaps it is because they know that if they were to actually discuss the issue openly and honestly, they would inevitably expose the truth they have been desperately trying to bury. I have witnessed this pattern play out repeatedly. People utilize humor as a deflection mechanism, attempting to make you feel as though you are the one taking things too seriously. But let me assure you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking things seriously, particularly when it comes to matters of importance and genuine concern. And if someone laughs it off, do not hesitate to call them out on it. Why do you find this funny? Is a simple yet powerful question that can expose the underlying discomfort and unease they are attempting to conceal. The fundamental problem with laughing off serious topics is that it effectively shuts down the possibility of meaningful conversation before it can even begin. It's akin to erecting a giant, no entry, sign on the road to authentic communication. And if you fail to address this pattern, the critical conversations you need to have about relationships, trust, and accountability will never actually take place. Everything remains on the surface, and genuine resolution becomes impossible. Here's the deeper message: honesty is not always enjoyable, it is not always light-hearted, and it is certainly not something that should be casually laughed away. If someone consistently demonstrates an inability to take serious things seriously, it is not simply about them dodging a single conversation, it is about them actively avoiding real connection and genuine truth. And if they cannot face those tough topics with you, how much trust can you genuinely place in them? So, the next time someone laughs off a serious conversation, do not allow it to slide. Ask the hard questions, press on the uncomfortable truths, and gently challenge their deflection tactics. Because laughter may momentarily lighten the mood, but it does not erase the weight of what is really going on beneath the surface. If they are unwilling to drop the act and engage with you on a deeper level, then you have your answer: they are not being entirely honest with you. 7. The fog of ambiguity, vagueness when pressed. Have you ever encountered that frustrating situation where you ask someone for specific details about something, and they suddenly transform into a poet of ambiguity, offering grand gestures and vague pronouncements, but no actual, concrete information? You press them for specifics, dates, names, verifiable facts, and they respond with a flurry of fluff, circling around the central point as if they are dancing in a dense fog. It's one of the most exasperating communication tactics, but it also serves as a significant red flag. If someone consistently fails to provide you with straight, direct answers when pressed for specifics, they are likely concealing something beneath a carefully constructed veil of vagueness. Allow me to share an illustrative example from my own professional life. I once had a coworker who would frequently boast about the impressive deals they were supposedly closing. However, whenever anyone attempted to inquire about the specifics, such as the names of the companies involved or the current stage of negotiations, their responses would become a masterpiece of evasion. "Oh, we're just in the early stages," they would say with a knowing smile. "Some really exciting conversations happening. Can't say too much right now, but it's going to be huge." Weeks would pass, and we would attempt to follow up, but the answer remained the same well-rehearsed song and dance. Eventually, it was revealed that not only were there no deals in the works, but they had fabricated a significant portion of the conversations altogether. They were essentially bluffing, hoping that no one would bother to dig too deep and expose their deception. Now, here's the controversial assertion: when someone resorts to vagueness when you ask for specifics, it's not simply a matter of them being overly secretive or reserved, it's a strong indication that they are actively lying. Let's call it what it is: vagueness is the liar's most reliable companion, because it allows them to evade accountability and maintain a semblance of control. It's akin to trying to grasp smoke with your bare hands. You think you're getting somewhere, but the details keep slipping away, replaced with half-answers and convoluted responses. They are essentially betting on your inherent politeness or your general distraction, hoping that you will refrain from pressing them too hard. Here's the unvarnished truth: people who are being honest and transparent do not need to hide behind a wall of vagueness. They can provide you with clear, direct answers, because they have nothing to protect or conceal. If you ask them for specifics, they will readily offer you the information, without elaborate dances or smoke and mirrors. But a liar, on the other hand, thrives in the gray areas, knowing that the more vague they can be, the more difficult it will be for you to pin them down and expose their deception. It's a classic avoidance tactic, and far too many people fall for it, because we have been socialized to avoid pushing too hard or demanding too many details. It's as if we fear coming across as rude or overly demanding. Now, let's be brutally honest for a moment. We have all found ourselves in situations where we have been vague ourselves, right? Perhaps we were unprepared to answer a question, or we felt cornered and uncomfortable, or we simply didn't want to admit that we didn't know something. But here's the crucial distinction: someone who is genuinely honest will typically own up to their uncertainty. "I'm not sure right now," or "I need to check on that," is a vastly different response than offering a stream of fluff and empty pronouncements in an attempt to sound knowledgeable and in control. The problem arises when people deliberately and strategically utilize vagueness to avoid being caught in a lie. There's a deeper message embedded here about integrity and trust. When someone consistently refuses to provide you with straight answers, they are undermining the very foundation of trust in your relationship, whether that relationship is personal or professional. And the worst part is that they are often relying on your good nature and inherent politeness to prevent you from pushing them too hard. They are banking on the assumption that you will let it slide, because pressing for specifics can feel awkward and uncomfortable. But here's the unyielding truth: when you feel that sense of awkwardness creeping in, that is precisely the moment you need to double down and demand clarity. People who cannot handle being specific when asked directly are individuals who are inherently uncomfortable with the truth. And that is the controversial truth that most people will shy away from acknowledging. They will offer excuses, such as, "Oh, maybe they're just bad with details," or "Perhaps they're simply too busy to focus on specifics." But I have learned from countless experiences that genuine honesty does not shy away from verifiable details. If someone genuinely cares about being truthful with you, they will make a concerted effort to be clear and direct. If they are consistently dancing around the question, offering vague platitudes instead of concrete information, that is a clear signal that they have something to hide. I have personally made a conscious decision to stop letting people off the hook with vague answers. If you truly want to know whether someone is being straight with you, pay close attention to how they respond when you ask for specifics. Do they become visibly uncomfortable? Do they offer a barrage of broad, sweeping statements devoid of any real substance? That is your cue to dig deeper and challenge their ambiguity. And if they still cannot provide you with a clear and direct answer, take it as a sign that they are not being entirely honest with you. Here's the deeper takeaway: honesty is not always convenient, but it is always clear and direct. It does not hide behind ambiguity or rely on obfuscation. When people refuse to provide you with specifics, it is because they are afraid of what those details will reveal. It's as if they are constructing a wall of vagueness to prevent you from seeing the truth that lies behind it. And if they are unwilling to tear down that wall for you, then you must ask yourself why they are building it in the first place. So, the next time someone responds to your legitimate inquiry with a vague and evasive answer, do not back down. You deserve clarity and directness, and anyone who respects you enough will be willing to provide it to you. Because vagueness might seem like a relatively minor issue, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a significant sign of deeper problems, problems that can erode trust more rapidly and effectively than any outright lie ever could. Unveiling deception, a call for discernment and honesty. The truth, often obscured by carefully crafted facades, is that lies do not always manifest as overt acts of deception. Sometimes, they are concealed within the subtle nuances of human interaction, the vague answers, the overly polished stories, the nervous laughter. These seemingly insignificant details can provide invaluable insights into the hidden truths that people attempt to conceal. By cultivating a heightened awareness of these subtle cues, you can sharpen your discernment and begin to see through the carefully constructed illusions that others project. Do not be afraid to ask the tough questions, the ones that others may shy away from. And do not settle for half-truths or evasive answers. At the end of the day, you deserve honesty and transparency in your relationships, both personal and professional. And the individuals who are consistently unable or unwilling to provide you with that level of honesty are ultimately the ones you need to release from your inner circle. Cultivate a discerning mind, remain true to your values, and always prioritize honesty above superficial comfort. By embracing these principles, you will navigate the complexities of human interaction with greater clarity and build stronger, more authentic relationships based on a foundation of unwavering trust. Stay sharp, stay true, and never compromise your commitment to truth.